In 2020, Democrats took full control of Washington.
And it will give Democrats control of the Senate.
Joe Biden has been elected.
But Republicans stood up in the states.
There was no blue wave. Democratic down-ballot disasters carried all the way to the state legislatures.
Now, we're the last line of defense against the Democrats' socialist agenda. The ways we're fighting back are bigger than you think.
Hello. We're back. I'm your host, Annie Moore, and this is episode 23 of It's Bigger Than You Think, a conversation about the politics that most impact our daily lives. Joining me this week, I'm really excited to have Representative Ashley Hinson. She's serving the good people of Congressional District 1 in Iowa. Representative Hinson, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Annie. It's good to be with you.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. You're part of our Right Leaders Network initiative as one of our advisory council members, means that you served in state office before running for the congressional seat that you have now, and you currently serve as a mentor to candidates who are in the very shoes that you were once in not too long ago. So what initially made you want to get involved and, run for the state house, back in the day before you served in the U.S. House?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to a couple of things. I was a journalist for more than a decade before I decided to get into the crazy world of politics. I was a morning news anchor. So I had a chance to really interview a lot of policymakers, a lot of politicians, saw really what was good policy, a lot of really bad policy, and the impact that truly had on families. And so that's kind of what inspired me to step up and run. I saw that there was an opportunity to really stop talking about it and actually start doing something about it. And so when I had that opportunity to run for the state legislature, I took it. I firmly believe I'm a mom to an 11 and 9-year-old. And I think about being a good advocate for them. It's being their parent, but it's also making sure that someone's there making good decisions on their behalf. And so that's why I decided that I was going to step up and run for the state legislature. And then obviously that kind of led me on my path here to run and serve in Congress.
Yeah. So what made you want to take that leap from the state house to the U.S. House?
Well, it was pretty simple. I saw the direction that things were headed in Washington, D.C. The writing was on the wall, and I think we're actually seeing a lot of that play out now with the policies that the Democrats are pushing forward in Washington, D.C. But I said, hey, this is a really important time to stand up for the future of our country. I'm 38 years old. I'll be 39 this summer. But, I think about truly that next generation and making sure that they can be successful, and having good people there to be your advocate is crucial. And so when my husband and I had that conversation about, hey, I really think I should step up and add my mom with the minivan and a mortgage voice to the conversation, we just need some common sense people in Washington. And so that's why I said, hey, I think it's my time to step up and do this. And I'm very excited that we crossed the finish line first. It was a hard fought battle, and but we were able to be successful and came very close to taking back the House. And I think that's our main goal this year in November.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What do you think was the biggest learning curve for you when you were first campaigning, first decided to run? What was the biggest learning curve that you were like, oh, I really needed to get a grasp on this and I wasn't sure what was coming for me?
Oh, well, I think just the sheer volume of policy that moves in Washington, D.C. I mean, the number of bills that are introduced, it is thousands upon thousands. So, when I found out, obviously you have, more than a dozen staff who are working for you to help you sort through all that. It's mountains and mountains of policy. So that I think was one of the things that I found most, I would say, surprising about going to Washington, D.C. But, what I think is important is surrounding yourself with the right people to vet that policy for you and making sure that Iowans have a chance to have all that policy vetted. So that's, in my mind, kind of one of the things that I was surprised by, but now I've figured out a good system to work through as well.
So what's one thing that you wish you had known before you had even decided to run?
Well, nothing quite prepares you for serving in Congress, certainly in Washington, D.C. It's already a completely chaotic place, but I think, the dysfunction is undersold. You hear about things on the 5 o'clock news, and then you get to see them play out in real time. The dysfunction on the floor over the last year, obviously, a lot of the COVID restrictions have still been in place. So we've really gotten a chance to see that chaos play out, but you can't undersell that. You just have to it's a real lesson in patience in terms of going there and working through the process. But I think that that chaos, I knew it was going to be bad, but it's really bad in Washington.
Wow. Yeah, that's what they say. Democrats in disarray, and
they are. Yes, and they are. They have a lot of trouble running the floor, just in terms of getting votes done on time. I mean, it's just, I think that Republicans will do it better. We're typically more efficient in every aspect of the word. And so I'm looking forward to seeing some of that decorum in the process come back after we take back the House.
Heck yeah. Okay, so generally from, the local level to the state level to Congress to Senate to White House, whatever it is, why do you think that there should be more Republican women who run for office?
Well, like I said, it's really important that we have strong, common sense conservatives willing to stand up for the shared values that we all have. I firmly believe, Iowa values are Heartland values, and Heartland values are American values. And that's why we need more conservative women to step up and run. And I was part of a record-breaking freshman class of GOP women. And you look at the success that we've had in just the first little over a year that we've been in office. It does show that having a variety of perspectives in Congress really is important, a variety of backgrounds. And I think women have a lot to add to that conversation. I've had the opportunity in several cases to have conversations with some of my colleagues and actually change their minds and say, hey, here's my perspective on this as a woman in the workplace, as a mom. And I think adding that extra context is what our founding fathers really would have wanted to see, right? And so I think that's why we need more conservative women to step up and run.
Yeah, I love that. What would you tell the women who are thinking about it, but aren't quite ready to take that leap, but they're but maybe, or they want to serve their community in a capacity similar to how you've been doing over the past several years?
Yeah, I would say step up and run. First of all, I think everybody always wants to come up with an excuse, right? Oh, well, now is not a good time because. Well, I'd say either one, let's eliminate the because and let's try and get it to a place where you can step up and run. Or in my case, my husband and I talked, and there's never really a good time to do anything in life, right? It's you just have to take those risks and be willing to jump for what you think is important, and that's exactly what I've chosen to do. And I'm a very faithful person. And I believe God gives you what you can handle. And sometimes what you can handle is challenging, but I believe that that's all by design. So I would encourage everyone to step up and add their voice to the conversation, how they think they can, and challenge yourself to get a little out of your comfort zone. It's just really important, and risk is rewarded, but the answer is always no if you don't ask. And that's what I think is really important. So my favorite piece of scripture is actually in the book of Matthew, where it's the ask, seek, knock. If you ask, you'll get an answer. If you seek, you'll find. And if you knock, the door will open. And I firmly believe that.
No, I think that's super true. So you mentioned this earlier, but as being part of the largest record-breaking freshman class of Republican women for the U.S. House, what would be one of your top takeaways from serving your community in that capacity from, a little bit over the past almost year and a half?
Yeah. Well, I think the top takeaways, when you look at the candidates that we were able to be successful with, it was women, it was minorities, and it was veterans. And you look at what our communities want and need representation for. And those are many of the areas that I feel like have been typically underrepresented with what's happening in Washington, D.C. And they are truly intersecting with what we're seeing happen in our country right now. I mentioned I'm the mom with the minivan, right? So I'm a per ounce grocery shopper. I go in, and when I look at the tags in the store, I'm looking at the cost per ounce. So I know what inflation does to a working family's budget. I know what is going into my grocery cart and what it cost a year ago versus what it costs now. So there's a prime example of how that context coming to the conversation and knowing that I'm representing all of those grocery shopping moms in my community who have the same challenges that our family faces, that's important to add to that conversation. The veterans, for example, who are frustrated because they're having trouble getting care because the personnel records division isn't back to work. And so those veterans are being able to go and advocate in a way because they understand, they've been there, they've lived that, and they need that experience. minority communities who have felt like they've been marginalized, and their voices haven't been heard. Look at what Hispanic voters are doing in this country, because they have felt like they're being minimalized in the conversation. And they're increasingly coming out and voting for conservatives because they see Hispanics and minorities representing them in Congress. So I think that that is absolutely critical, that Congress should look like people and be able to tell people's stories. And that's exactly what I think our freshman class has been able to do very, very successfully in Washington.
So you've touched on this some, but I want to, dig a little bit deeper. Why do you think strong candidate recruitment is so critical for the future of the Republican Party?
Yeah. Well, I obviously highlighted some of the backgrounds and why that matters. I like to call it context, perspective, and relevance. Having all of the CPR, so to speak, makes a really, really good candidate. But it really comes down to helping to build our bench. We need people with experience with a variety of these backgrounds to be in the pipeline to step up and run for opportunities as they present themselves. So every level of recruitment, whether it's the school boards, we've seen a lot of success, obviously, in making sure parents' voices are now reflected on school boards, state legislatures and state senates, state houses, then moving to Congress, right, to build up our party and continue to make sure we are securing the future of this common conservative vision. That's why having such a solid bench and good, solid candidates recruited is absolutely critical. And I have conversations with a lot of conservative women friends of mine, and I'm saying, hey, you should step up and add your voice, because they're concerned about the future of our country, and we're having those conversations. So I'm trying to do my part to make sure they feel like they could do it and they could step up to run. And again, let's eliminate that, well, I can't because, let's do it, I have to because it's important.
How do you think that the Republican Party can make sure that they're recruiting the right candidates?
Well, I think it starts with making sure that the candidate is suited to the district that they represent, right? Prime example, you look across the country right now, we've got Jen Kiggins running in Virginia. She's, a Navy helicopter pilot and a nurse practitioner, and she looks like her community in Virginia Beach and acts and has a role in her community and the experience to reflect the military in her community. So she matches her community. Juan Ciscomani is running in Arizona. Prime example of someone whose parents immigrated to this country. He serves a border district. So it's about having those candidates that match up right with the district that they represent. And because of that, I think we're able to make great inroads into a lot of other communities that typically haven't thought of the Republican Party as a big tent party, but we are. And I think that's where you talk about recruiting the right candidates. It shows that we are the party that is the big tent party, contrary to what some other people might be saying.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so you've touched on this a couple times throughout this little interview, but you also talked about this a lot last year when you did the panel for the Right Leaders Network Advisory Council. Mm-hmm. You talked about how being a mom actually strengthens your credibility when you message on things like gas and grocery prices, which are obviously going up right now with, inflation and all the things, or on energy. How would you advise other moms running for state office for the first time to really lean in like you do on these issues?
Yeah. Well, I think being authentic is absolutely critical to being a good public leader. And people want to know that the person representing them isn't, sitting in a back room ignoring their conversations. And I think that if you can add that level of authenticity, it adds credibility to the fact that you're serving in Washington or wherever you're serving in the state house, or your city council, that, hey, I know what everybody's experiencing. I'm pulling in that context. I'm not afraid to listen. I think that's where all of that authenticity can really make a difference in making sure you have the right candidate, and making sure as a candidate, you are also connecting with voters in a very meaningful way.
Yeah, I think the most successful candidates are often very personable, and like their constituents can relate to them.
Yeah.
And I think that,
well, and don't be afraid to be humbled too. Like, that's what I tell people is, like, it's okay to just be yourself, and nobody expects perfection. I certainly know that I come home every day and my kids humble me and remind me that I'm still a mom and a wife first before I'm a politician. And I think just being yourself and being authentic is so important, especially in the environment we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on this again a little bit earlier, but what do you think the future of the GOP is really going to look like?
Well, I think it's interesting because we've kind of undergone just a massive expansion of our party in terms of who we are reaching out to. And I think that's because the Democrat Party has turned its backs on people. So Republicans, we're welcoming people to our big tent party. Just recently, the head of the Democrat Party said that Republicans are frauds and fascists. And I mean, you talk about divisive rhetoric. I mean, that is truly divisive. And I think people are realizing that the Democrat Party has left them behind. The Democrat Party is the party of big government and is taking our country towards socialism. So I think that when we talk about moving forward as a party, people are tired of identity politics. Oh, because I'm a woman, I should be a liberal. Well, no, I'm especially a woman, former member of the media, right? No, I'm a conservative mom, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I have been a conservative my entire life. And I think that what we're going to start seeing is that, hey, just because you look a certain way or have a certain background, that doesn't tie you to a political ideology. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us as a party to reach out to people who, hey, we are fighting for you on this issue. We're fighting for you on this issue, and we're fighting for you on this issue. And we don't have to agree on everything, but let us tell you why we believe our solutions are the best option. And I think that that's why we're moving forward, and we have a lot of great opportunity as a party going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Your fellow freshman Congresswoman Young Kim out in California, she always calls it the Grand Opportunity Party. And I think that's very reflective of the big tent party that the GOP is becoming. So
yeah, well, and look at Young's story, right? I mean, she's an immigrant and she has truly had the American dream. I mentioned Juan Ciscomani, and he was talking about his dad's a bus driver, right? And he came to this country, he's still driving a bus in Arizona, and his son now might have an opportunity to come serve in Congress. I mean, we are the opportunity party because where else in the world can you have a chance at that true American dream where eventually you might be able to be the one serving the voices of your community in Congress in Washington. So, I mean, it's a pretty incredible place, a true place of opportunity. And I think we are the party of opportunity.
So this is my last question. This is the money question, I think. What's one thing that you hope happens on November 8th this year?
Oh, well, I have a long list of things that I hope happen in November. But first and foremost, this is something that I think has to happen in November. We have to fire Nancy Pelosi and take back the House, because it is very clear that we have to put a check on the administration in Washington, D.C. So I think the fastest way we can do that is by taking back control of the gavel in Washington, D.C. But I think across the country, we're seeing that trend. And so I hope that across the country, we continue to make sure we're turning more legislatures red. We continue to make sure we're helping support legislative candidates up and down the ballot who want to make sure that they are continuing to fight for, again, our shared values of strong faith, strong family, and just strong freedom, right? We believe in freedom and patriotism. And I think all of that will be on display on November 8th.
I think you're right. And I hope that you're right. Let the red wave roll. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners today?
I would just say, I believe in the power of positivity, and I think it's really important that when we talk about leaders, we're working hard. We try to get it right all the time, and there are so many challenges in this country that are worth fighting for. And so I think just make sure you're adding your voice to the conversation, because it's absolutely critical that we hear from you and that your stories are then reflected and told at the policymaking tables, whether it's in your city government, your county government, or at the policymaking tables in DC.
Beautifully said. Okay, Congresswoman Hinson, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everybody for listening, watching, tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform that you're listening to. And always remember, state politics have implications that are bigger than you think.